The containment cell exploded outward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Subject 447 tore through the reinforced door like it was paper, his obsidian scales gleaming under the emergency lights that now bathed the prison transport ship in blood-red warning. 3 guards tried to form a defensive line in the corridor. They lasted 4 seconds. Captain Horvath slammed his fist on the communication panel. All units to detention level 7. Seal bulkheads 9 through 14. Authorization Horvath Crimson 9. His second officer, a young Dravoxy named Pellin, looked up from his console with wide eyes. Sir, the creature has already breached bulkhead 11. It is moving toward the engineering section. Horvath felt his dual heart sink. 20 years of transporting dangerous life forms across the galaxy, and he had never lost a prisoner. Not once. And now the most dangerous predator in known space was loose on his ship. Security Chief Rena burst onto the bridge, her armor scorched and dented. Green blood, not her own, dripped from her combat blade. Captain, I lost my entire squad. 14 soldiers. Gone. That thing moves like lightning and thinks like a tactical computer. We need to evacuate the ship and trigger the self-destruct. Negative, Horvath said, though the suggestion terrified him less than it should have. We have 200 crew members on this vessel. We follow Containment Protocol Delta. Rena grabbed his arm, her claws digging into his uniform. You do not understand. I have fought in 3 wars. I have hunted death beasts on 7 worlds. That creature down there is beyond anything I have ever encountered. It is not just strong or fast. It is intelligent. It adapted to our tactics in real time. It herded us into kill zones. It used our own equipment against us. Another explosion rocked the ship. Sparks rained from overhead panels. Pellin shouted over the alarms. Engineering reports massive damage to the hyperdrive core. We are losing containment on decks 4 and 5. Horvath pulled up the internal sensors. The creature's biosignature showed as a bright yellow dot, moving through the ship's corridors. Behind it, dozens of red dots marked his fallen crew members. He watched as Subject 447 tore through another bulkhead, this time heading toward the escape pod bay. It is trying to leave the ship, he said. Rena nodded. Smart. It knows we will destroy the ship rather than let it reach a populated world. But Horvath saw something else on his screen. The navigation computer showed their current position, and his blood went cold. We are in orbit around catalog number 7834B, the newly discovered world. The primitive one? Pellin asked. The Council just made first contact with them 3 cycles ago. Horvath pulled up the planetary data. Earth. Class 3 Deathworld. Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. Gravity slightly higher than Dravoxy standard. Home to a species called humans who had just developed basic space travel. Population 7 billion. No planetary defense grid. No military capable of fighting off a Nightshade Reaver. Get me a firing solution on those escape pods, Horvath ordered. We cannot let it reach the surface. But even as he gave the command, he knew they were too late. Subject 447 had already reached Bay 7. Security cameras showed the creature ripping through the bay door, its 3 rows of teeth gleaming as it roared in triumph. The 8-foot predator squeezed into a pod meant for species half its size and launched. Track it, Horvath barked. Pellin worked his console frantically. Pod is entering the atmosphere. Trajectory shows impact in the northern continent. Rural sector. No major population centers within 50 miles. Small mercy, Horvath thought. At least it would not land in a city. But that only delayed the inevitable. A Nightshade Reaver loose on a primitive world was a death sentence for every living thing within reach. He had seen the reports from other incidents. An entire colony of 10,000 Dravoxy warriors all dead in 3 days. A research station on Velen 6, nobody left alive to even send a distress signal. Inform the Galactic Council immediately, Horvath said, his voice heavy. Tell them we have lost Subject 447. Tell them it has crashed on Earth. And tell them to prepare for the worst. Rena looked at him. They will want to sterilize the impact zone from orbit. I know. Those humans will not understand. They will think we are attacking them. I know that too. The escape pod broke through Earth's atmosphere like a meteor, trailing fire across the early morning sky. Inside, Subject 447 gripped the safety harness with claws that had killed hundreds. The creature had no name, no home, no purpose except survival. It had been captured as a juvenile on its homeworld, a place where only the strongest and most vicious survived past their first year. Every world it had seen since had been through the bars of a cage or the walls of a cell, but now it was free. and freedom meant hunting. The pod hit the ground hard, tearing through a wooden fence and plowing a deep furrow through a field of growing wheat. Metal screamed as it tumbled end over end before finally coming to rest against a large red structure. Subject 447 kicked open the pod door and emerged into the sunlight, breathing air that was not recycled, feeling ground beneath its feet that was not metal plating. The creature's enhanced senses took in everything at once: the smell of earth and growing things, the sound of animals nearby, large ones that would make good prey, the warmth of a yellow sun different from its own world's harsh blue star, and something else: the scent of another predator. Small, but definitely a predator. Subject 447 moved toward the large red building, its claws leaving deep gouges in the soft ground. The door stood open. Inside, it could hear the nervous sounds of prey animals, their heartbeats quickening as they sensed danger. The creature entered what humans called a barn, cows pressed against the far wall, their eyes rolling in terror. Subject 447 evaluated them with the cold calculation of an apex predator: easy prey, slow, weak. It took a step forward, ready to feed after the long captivity. Then it heard footsteps. Slow, steady, completely calm. A figure appeared in the barn doorway, backlit by the morning sun. Human, the creature's implanted translator identified. Male, elderly by the species standards. The human held a steaming cup in one hand and looked at the 8-foot scaled predator with the expression of someone who had just found a stray dog in his yard. "Well now," the human said, his voice carrying no fear whatsoever, "that is one heck of a mess you made of my fence." Subject 447 snarled, a sound that had made hardened soldiers flee in terror. The human took a sip from his cup and glanced at the crashed pod still smoking in his field. "Guess you had a rough landing. You hurt?" The creature's translator struggled with the casual tone. No species in the galaxy spoke to a nightshade reaver like this. They screamed. They ran. They died. They did not ask if it was hurt. The human, whose name was Walter Briggs, though the creature did not know this yet, set down his cup on a wooden post and walked closer. Not the cautious approach of someone trying to avoid startling a dangerous animal, just a man walking across his own property. "Let me get a look at you. You are bleeding there on your side." Subject 447 looked down. Green ichor leaked from a gash in its scaled hide where the pod had torn open during the crash. The injury was not serious by its standards, but it did hurt. Walter moved to a wall where tools hung in neat rows. He selected a long implement with pointed prongs. Subject 447 tensed, ready to kill this foolish prey creature that dared approach. But Walter did not attack. He used the tool to gently move some hay aside, revealing a metal box with a red cross symbol on it. "First things first," Walter said, opening the box. "We need to clean that wound before it gets infected." "Then I suppose we should figure out what to call you. Can't just keep thinking of you as that big fellow in my barn." Subject 447 watched in complete confusion as this human pulled out cloths and bottles, completely ignoring the fact that he stood within easy killing distance of the galaxy's most feared predator. "How about Carl?" Walter said, looking up at the creature. "You look like a Carl to me." And for the first time in its entire violent existence, Subject 447, now apparently called Carl, had absolutely no idea what to do next. Carl's 3 hearts hammered in his chest as the human came closer with strange items in his hands. Every instinct screamed to attack, to kill this weak creature before it could become a threat. But something held him back. Maybe it was the wound in his side that hurt more than he wanted to admit. Maybe it was exhaustion from the escape and crash. Or maybe it was the simple fact that this human showed no fear at all, and that confused Carl more than anything else in his life. "Now hold still," Walter said, approaching with a cloth and a brown bottle. "This is going to sting a bit, but it will keep the infection out," Carl growled, a deep rumbling sound that made the cows press even harder against the far wall. Walter paused but did not retreat. He just looked Carl in the eye, the way someone might look at a spooked horse. "I get it. You have had a bad day, probably a bad year from the looks of things, but that wound needs tending and I am the only one here who can do it. So you can either let me help, or you can bleed all over my clean barn floor. Your choice." The human's voice held something Carl had never heard before. Not cruelty, not fear, just a kind of firm patience, like he was dealing with something difficult but not impossible. Carl's translator implant struggled to process the emotional context. Walter took Carl's silence as agreement and stepped closer. He reached up and Carl tensed, ready to strike. But the human just pressed the cloth against the wound on Carl's side. The liquid burned and Carl hissed, his claws extending automatically. Walter did not even flinch. There we go, see? Not so bad. Carl looked down at this strange creature tending to his injury with the care someone might show to a valued animal. No one had ever helped Carl before. In the wild of his homeworld, injury meant death. In captivity, the guards had simply tranquilized him and let medical machines do the work while he was unconscious. But this human touched him with actual hands, gentle despite the roughness of his weathered skin. "You are going to need stitches," Walter said, examining the wound. "This is deeper than I thought. Good thing I have practice sewing up cattle that get caught on barbed wire." He walked back to his medical kit and pulled out a curved needle and thick thread. Carl watched, fascinated despite himself. The human came back and, without asking permission or showing any hesitation, began to stitch the wound closed. Carl felt each pull of the thread, not painful exactly, but strange. "Intimate even there," Walter said after a few minutes. "That should hold. You heal fast, I bet. Strong constitution." He tied off the thread and stepped back to admire his work. Then he looked up at Carl's face. Really looked. Not at a monster or a specimen, but at him. "You got a rough look about you, Carl. I have seen that look before. In soldiers coming back from bad places. You have been through something hard." Carl's translator provided the words, but the meaning went deeper than language. This human saw him, not as a thing to be contained or destroyed, but as a living being with experiences and pain. Walter picked up his cup and drank the last of whatever was inside. "Well, I suppose you are hungry. You look like you eat meat, and I have got plenty in the deep freeze. But first rule if you are staying in my barn, you do not eat my cattle. They are not food. They are livestock. There is a difference." Staying in his barn, Carl processed this. The human was not trying to drive him away or kill him. He was offering shelter. The concept was so foreign that Carl could not immediately respond. Walter walked toward the barn door. "Come on, let me show you where you can sleep. That corner over there has plenty of hay, stays warm at night, and there is a water trough if you get thirsty." Carl followed, not because he was obeying orders, but because he genuinely did not know what else to do. This human had completely destroyed his understanding of how other species behaved. Where was the fear? Where was the violence? Where was the logic that said a predator must be destroyed? Walter showed him a corner of the barn where hay was piled deep. "This will do for now. I will bring you some food in a bit. You just rest and let that wound start healing." A small furry animal appeared in the doorway, black and white with alert eyes. It looked at Carl and barked once, sharp and challenging. Carl tensed, ready to eliminate this tiny threat. "Betty, hush," Walter said. The small animal, a dog Carl's translator identified, immediately sat down and stopped barking. "That is Carl. He is staying with us for a while. You be nice." Betty looked at Carl, sniffed the air, then apparently decided the 8-foot predator was not worth her concern. She trotted over to Walter and sat by his feet, completely ignoring Carl. "Betty is a good judge of character," Walter said, scratching the dog behind her ears. "If she thinks you are okay, then you are probably okay." Carl stared at the small dog that showed no fear of him whatsoever. What kind of world was this where prey animals did not run and small creatures did not hide? Walter headed toward the door. "I have got chores to do. You rest up. I will be back in a couple hours with food." He left, just walked out of the barn and left Carl alone with his cows and his fearless dog. Carl could escape right now, could hunt, could kill, could do what Nightshade Reavers were born to do. But instead, Carl found himself walking to the corner Walter had indicated. The hay was soft, softer than any surface he had rested on since being captured. He lowered himself down carefully, mindful of his stitched wound, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something other than hunger or anger or fear. He felt tired, bone-deep, soul-deep tired. Betty trotted over and, to Carl's amazement, curled up about 10 feet away from him. Not right next to him, but close enough, like she was keeping watch or keeping him company, or both. Carl closed his eyes. Just for a moment, he told himself. Just to rest. The morning sun slanted through the barn windows, warm on his scales. Somewhere outside he could hear Walter moving around, whistling tunelessly as he worked. The cows had settled down, no longer terrified. One of them was actually eating hay, as if a Galactic-class predator was not lying 20 feet away. When Walter returned 3 hours later with a bucket full of raw meat and some vegetables, He found Carl still asleep in the hay corner. Betty had moved closer and was now sleeping right next to the creature's massive arm. Walter smiled and set the bucket down quietly, not wanting to wake them. "Well, Margaret," he said softly to the memory of his late wife, "looks like we have got ourselves a new boarder. I know you always said I had a soft spot for strays. Guess you were right." He headed back outside to finish his chores, leaving Carl to sleep. Above the farm, invisible to the human eye, Captain Horvath's ship hung in orbit. Long-range sensors tracked the Nightshade Reaver's biosignature, waiting for the inevitable moment when it would begin its killing spree. But the expected pattern of movement, of hunting and destruction, never came. Instead, the sensors showed something impossible. The creature was stationary, resting. Its vital signs indicated sleep, not the heightened state of a predator on the hunt. Horvath stared at the readouts in confusion. This makes no sense. Nightshade Reavers do not rest in the open. They find defensive positions and remain alert for threats. Rena looked over his shoulder at the data. Perhaps it is injured worse than we thought. Perhaps it is dying. But even as she said it, the medical scanners showed the creature's wound was already beginning to heal. Its vital signs were strong. It was not dying. It was just sleeping in the sun in a barn on a farm in Montana, while an old human did his chores and a small dog kept watch, and nobody in the entire galaxy could explain why. The Galactic Council chamber erupted into chaos the moment Horvath finished his report. Representatives from 40 different species shouted over each other, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping languages. At the center of the circular room, the holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly, with a red marker indicating the crash site in Montana. Council member Talus, a tall Yevran with silver skin and 4 arms, slammed his primary hand on the podium. "Order, we must have order." The chamber gradually quieted. Talus looked at Horvath's holographic image with barely concealed anger. "Captain, you're telling this council that you lost the most dangerous prisoner in galactic custody, that it crashed on a newly contacted primitive world, and that you waited 6 hours to inform us?" Horvath stood straight despite the accusation. "Council member, I followed protocol. I immediately scanned for the creature's biosignature to confirm it survived the crash. Then I attempted to track its movements to assess the threat level. The delay in reporting was due to the unusual readings we received." "Unusual how?" asked Council member Dreve, a Korthan with thick armor plating and tactical experience that made him the Council's military expert. "The creature is not hunting," Horvath said. "It has remained in a fixed location since landing. A farm structure. Our sensors indicate it is in close proximity to a human, but there are no signs of distress or combat. The human's vital signs are normal. He is going about routine activities." The chamber fell silent. Then Talus spoke again, his voice cold. "You are saying the Nightshade Reaver is simply sitting there? Not killing? Not feeding?" "That is correct, Council member." "Impossible," Dreve said. "I have studied every recorded encounter with Nightshade Reavers. They are apex predators. They hunt constantly. They cannot be reasoned with or controlled. Show me your data." Horvath transmitted the sensor logs to the main display. The council watched as graphs and readouts showed Carl's biosignature, stable and calm, moving occasionally around the farm but always returning to the barn structure. Timestamps showed the human, identified through Earth's basic database as Walter Briggs, moving in predictable patterns between the barn and his house and various fields. "This is a trick," Talus declared. "The creature must be toying with its prey. It is documented behavior. They sometimes observe their targets before killing them." "For 6 hours?" Horvath challenged. "With multiple opportunities to attack when the human was alone and vulnerable. Our behavioral experts have reviewed the data. This does not match any known Nightshade Reaver pattern." A new voice joined the discussion. "Perhaps we should ask the humans what they observe." Everyone turned to look at Ambassador Yuki Tanaka, Earth's representative to the council. She was young for a diplomat, barely 6 months into her position, and most of the council still treated her with the polite condescension reserved for primitive species. "With respect, Ambassador," Talus said in a tone that held no respect at all, "your people do not understand what is happening on their world. A Nightshade Reaver has killed thousands of sentient beings across multiple systems. We are discussing orbital bombardment of the landing site before it reaches your population centers." Tanaka felt ice run through her veins. You want to bomb Montana? There are people living there. Innocent people who have nothing to do with your prison transport failure. Acceptable losses, Dreve said flatly, compared to the millions who will die if the creature is allowed to spread across your world. No, Tanaka said, her voice stronger now. You will not drop bombs on my planet without exhausting every other option first. We deserve at least a chance to handle this ourselves. Talus made a dismissive gesture with two of his hands. Your species has no experience with Class 5 Deathworld predators. You have no weapons that could harm it. You have no training to even recognize the threat. The creature is likely already planning its first mass casualty event. Horvath cleared his throat. Council, I would like to send a tactical team to the surface for close observation before we make any final decisions. Ambassador Tanaka is correct that we should verify the situation directly before taking irreversible action. Drave considered this. A ground team would be at extreme risk. I volunteer to lead it personally, Horvath said. Security Chief Rena and I have both faced the creature before. We know what it is capable of. If anyone can assess the threat accurately, it is us. The council members conferred in hushed tones. Finally, Talus spoke. Very well. You have 48 hours to conduct your assessment. But, Captain, understand this clearly. If that creature makes one move toward a population center, if it kills even one human, we will not hesitate to sterilize the entire region. Are we understood? Yes, council member. Ambassador Tanaka, you will accompany the ground team. Since this is happening on your world, you should witness firsthand what we are dealing with. Tanaka nodded, trying not to show her fear. She had seen the reports on Nightshade Reavers, the videos of destroyed colonies, the casualty figures that stretched into thousands, and now one of these creatures was loose in Montana, on a farm, somehow not killing anyone. The meeting adjourned. Tanaka caught up with Horvath's hologram before he disconnected. Captain, do you really think there is a chance this creature is not planning to kill everyone? Horvath paused. Ambassador, I have been in this business for 20 years. I have transported every kind of dangerous life form you can imagine, and I have never seen sensor readings like this. That creature should be hunting, but instead our latest scan shows it helping the human repair a fence. Helping? The human was working on a damaged fence line. The creature was observed carrying fence posts, not attacking, not threatening, carrying supplies. Tanaka felt a strange hope bloom in her chest. What if we are wrong about them? What if Nightshade Reavers can be more than what we think they are? Then everything we know about interspecies relations will need to be reconsidered, Horvath said. But I would not bet on that outcome, Ambassador. More likely the creature is confused or injured and will revert to its nature soon. We need to be ready for that. Down on Earth, unaware of the galactic debate happening above him, Walter showed Carl how to properly tighten barbed wire. The creature watched with intense focus as Walter demonstrated the technique, his massive claws surprisingly gentle, as he tried to mimic the human's movements. Not so tight, Walter said. You want it firm but not stressed. Wire that is too tight will snap in winter when it contracts. Carl adjusted his grip and tried again. This time the wire held at the right tension. Walter inspected the work and nodded. Good job, Carl. You're getting the hang of it. A small sound, something between a growl and a purr, came from Carl's throat. His translator did not have a word for the emotion he felt. Pride, maybe, or satisfaction at completing a task well. On his homeworld, the only tasks were killing and surviving. Here, there were other things. Things he had never imagined could matter. Walter wiped sweat from his forehead. It is getting hot. Let us take a break. I have got lemonade in the house. They walked back toward the farmhouse, Carl's shadow falling long across the ground as the afternoon sun hung heavy in the sky. Betty trotted ahead of them, occasionally looking back to make sure they were following. Somewhere high above, invisible and silent, Horvath's ship began its descent toward Earth's surface. The meeting that would change the galaxy was now just hours away. But for this moment, in this quiet corner of Montana, an old farmer and the universe's most feared predator simply walked together toward the house, thinking about nothing more complicated than cold lemonade and afternoon chores. Walter glanced at Carl and smiled. You know, Carl, my late wife Margaret always said I had a gift for seeing the good in people. Or creatures, I suppose, in your case. She would have liked you. Carl did not understand why those words made his heart feel warm, but they did. And for the first time since leaving his homeworld as a captive juvenile, Carl thought maybe, just maybe, There was more to existence than fighting and fear. Above them, Horvath's tactical team prepared their weapons and armor, ready for battle with a monster. They had no idea that the monster was currently learning how to make proper fence corners and drinking water from a bucket, while a border collie judged his technique. Horvath's tactical team moved through Walter's wheat field like shadows, their advanced camouflage suits bending light around them. 12 elite soldiers, each one a veteran of multiple combat operations, approached the farm with weapons ready and nerves stretched tight. Behind them, 20 miles away, their landing craft sat hidden in a canyon, ready for emergency extraction. Security Chief Rena held up a closed fist, and the team froze. Through her helmet's enhanced vision, she could see the barn clearly. The biosignature reading showed the Nightshade Reaver inside, but something was wrong with the data. The creature's vitals were too calm. Its heat signature suggested it was moving slowly, not prowling or hunting. "This feels like a trap," she whispered into the team comm. Horvath, who had positioned himself behind the main assault element with Ambassador Tanaka, studied his portable scanner. The human is inside the barn as well, still showing normal vitals, no stress indicators. "Maybe it has not killed him yet because it is saving him," suggested Sergeant Korin, a Dravoxy warrior with 3 combat decorations. Some predators like their prey fresh. Tanaka, wearing a borrowed environmental suit that was too big for her, spoke up. "Or maybe it is not planning to kill him at all." Several soldiers turned to look at her, their expressions hidden behind helmets but their skepticism obvious in their body language. "With respect, Ambassador," Rena said, "you have never seen what these creatures can do." "I have. I watched Subject 447 tear through my squad like we were nothing. Whatever is happening in that barn, it is not friendship." "Then let us find out," Horvath said. He stood up, making himself visible, and began walking toward the farmhouse. "Team, maintain position and cover. Ambassador, you are with me. Rena, if this goes bad, you know what to do." Rena nodded grimly and sighted her plasma cannon on the barn door. Horvath and Tanaka approached the house. It was a simple structure, painted white with a covered porch where a rocking chair sat next to a small table. On that table was a glass of iced tea, still cold, condensation beating on the outside. Sitting in the rocking chair was Walter Briggs. He looked up as the 2 aliens approached, showing about as much concern as someone might show for a neighbor dropping by unexpectedly. He took a sip of his tea and set it down carefully. "Afternoon," Walter said. "You folks are a little overdressed for a social call." Horvath stopped at the base of the porch steps. He had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times on the flight down. But now, facing this calm human in his rocking chair, all his carefully planned words evaporated. "Mr. Briggs, I am Captain Horvath of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division. We are here about the creature that crashed on your property." "You mean Carl?" Walter said. "He is in the barn, probably sleeping off lunch. I gave him about 30 pounds of beef and he was pretty happy about it." Tanaka stared. "You fed it?" "Him," Walter corrected gently. "Carl is a him, not an it. And yes, I fed him. He was hungry." "You folks do not starve your prisoners, do you?" Horvath felt his worldview tilting. "Mr. Briggs, do you understand what that creature is? What it has done?" "I know what he was," Walter said. "I was in the Marines, Captain. 2 tours. I have seen what people become when all they know is fighting in cages. Carl here, he has had a rough life from what I can tell, but that does not mean he has to keep being what he was. It killed 17 of my crew," Horvath said, his voice hard. "It destroyed a maximum security containment facility. It has killed thousands across multiple systems. And you think you can just feed it lunch and everything will be fine?" Walter stood up slowly, and despite being shorter and older and frailer than anyone in the tactical team, something in his posture made Horvath take a step back. "Tell me something, Captain. Did you ever give Carl a choice? Did you ever treat him like something other than a monster to be locked up? It is a Nightshade Reaver. They are incapable of—" "He," Walter interrupted. "And incapable of what? Learning, changing? I have worked with animals my whole life, Captain. Horses, cattle, even trained dogs for combat back in my service days. You know what I learned? You get back what you put in. You treat something like a dangerous animal, it becomes one. You treat it with respect and patience, and sometimes you get a different result." Tanaka found herself nodding. "There is precedent for this. Humans domesticated wolves thousands of years ago. Animals that were apex predators became companions. That took generations, Horvath said. Not 2 days. Maybe, Walter said. Or maybe it just takes someone willing to try a different approach. Now, are you folks planning to hurt Carl? Because if you are, we are going to have a problem. Rena's voice came through Horvath's helmet comm. Captain, I have a clear shot on the barn door. Say the word. Horvath looked at this stubborn old human who was willing to stand between a tactical team and the most dangerous predator in known space. Fool or visionary, he could not tell which. I need to see the creature, Horvath said. I need to assess the situation myself. Walter studied him for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. But you come with respect or you do not come at all. Carl has been through enough. They walked toward the barn, Tanaka and Horvath following Walter's steady pace. The old farmer did not seem worried about alien technology or weapons or the dozen soldiers watching from the wheat field. He was just a man walking across his property. He stopped at the barn door and turned to Horvath. One more thing. Carl is protective of me.
He does not know you.
So let me go in first and explain that you are friends. Otherwise, he might get the wrong idea. Protective? Horvath repeated. Yeah. Yesterday, a coyote got near the property line. Carl positioned himself between me and it. Did not attack the coyote, mind you. Just made it clear I was under his protection. That is not monster behavior, Captain. That is family behavior. Walter pushed open the barn door and stepped inside. Carl, we have got visitors. They are friends. Well, mostly. Do not eat them, okay? Horvath took a deep breath and followed, Tanaka right behind him. His hand moved to his sidearm. Every combat instinct screaming at him that this was suicide. The barn was dim after the bright sunlight, and it took a moment for his eyes to adjust. When they did, Horvath saw the nightshade reaver lying in a corner on a pile of hay. But unlike every other time he had seen the creature, Carl was not coiled for attack. He was stretched out, almost relaxed, his head resting on his arms. Betty, the border collie, was curled up against the creature's side. She looked up at the visitors, decided they were not interesting, and went back to sleep. Carl opened his eyes and focused on Horvath. Recognition flashed across the creature's face, followed by something Horvath had never seen in a nightshade reaver's eyes before. Uncertainty. Carl looked at Walter, then back at Horvath, clearly trying to decide how to react. It is okay, Carl, Walter said calmly. They just want to talk. No fighting, no cages. Just talking. Carl slowly stood up, and Horvath was reminded viscerally of how dangerous this creature was. 8 feet of scaled muscle, claws that could tear through armor, speed that could close the distance between them in less than a second. But Carl did not attack. He moved to stand near Walter, close enough to protect him if needed, but not threatening. His posture was almost uncertain, like a dog that was not sure if these strangers were welcome or not. Captain Horvath, Walter said. Meet Carl. Carl, this is Captain Horvath. He is the one who was keeping you locked up before, but that is in the past now. We are all going to be civilized about this. Horvath stared. The creature that had killed 17 of his crew, that had destroyed secure containment like it was paper, was standing there waiting for direction from an elderly human farmer. It made no sense. It violated everything he knew about nightshade reavers. Tanaka stepped forward slowly. Carl, can you understand me? Carl's translator implant clicked, processing. Then in a voice that sounded like gravel sliding down a mountain, Carl spoke. Yes. It was the first word anyone had ever heard a nightshade reaver speak voluntarily. In the wheat field, Rena heard it through Horvath's open comm and nearly dropped her weapon in shock. How do you feel? Tanaka asked gently. Carl looked at Walter, then back at Tanaka. His translator struggled with the concept, then produced words that changed everything. Safe, I feel safe. The word hung in the air of the barn like something physical. Safe. Horvath had transported hundreds of dangerous beings, studied countless predator species, served in the enforcement division for 2 decades, and he had never once heard that word from a nightshade reaver. They did not feel safe. They felt hungry, angry, threatened, aggressive, but never safe. Permission to approach? Tanaka asked Walter, not Carl, which the old farmer appreciated. That is up to Carl, Walter said. He gets to decide who comes close to him now. No more people making choices for him. Tanaka turned to Carl. May I come closer? I promise I mean no harm. Carl looked at Walter again, seeking guidance. Walter just gave him an encouraging nod. Your choice, buddy. After a long moment, Carl took one step back, giving Tanaka room to approach but positioning himself where he could still protect Walter if needed. She took it as permission and moved forward slowly, her hands visible and empty. "My name is Yuki Tanaka," she said. "I represent Earth to the Galactic Council. That means I try to make sure Earth and its people are treated fairly. But I also want to make sure you are treated fairly, Carl." Carl's translator processed this. "Why? Because you are a living being. You deserve respect and basic rights regardless of what species you are or what you have done in the past." "I killed," Carl said, his voice rough. "Many. I am what your people call monster." "You killed to survive," Walter interjected. "There is a difference between surviving and being evil, Carl. We have talked about this." Horvath finally found his voice. "Mr. Briggs, with all due respect, you have known this creature for less than 48 hours. You cannot possibly understand its nature." Walter turned to face the captain fully. "And you have kept him in a cage for how long? Treated him like a thing instead of a person? Tell me, Captain. Did you ever try talking to him? Did you ever ask him what he wanted? Or did you just assume he was beyond that kind of consideration?" "The protocols. Your protocols turned him into what he was," Walter said firmly. "Carl told me about his life. Through gestures and some words, we communicated. He was captured as a juvenile. Never knew anything except cages and guards with weapons. Every interaction he ever had taught him that violence was the only language anyone spoke to him. So that is what he learned." Rena's voice came through the comm. "Captain, this is dangerous. We should extract you now and proceed with containment." But Horvath held up a hand, signaling her to wait. He looked at Carl, really looked at him, trying to see past the monster to whatever was underneath. "If we let you stay here on this farm, can you promise there will be no violence?" Carl considered the question. Walter had taught him about promises, about trust, about keeping your word. These were not concepts that existed on his homeworld. "But they existed here, I promise," Carl said slowly. "No violence. Unless Walter is threatened. Then I protect." "That is fair," Tanaka said quickly before Horvath could object. "Self-defense and defense of others are recognized rights under galactic law." Horvath wanted to argue, but he found he could not. What argument did he have? That the creature was inherently dangerous? So were Dravoxy warriors, and they served throughout the galaxy in positions of trust. That Nightshade Reavers could not be trusted? Well, here was evidence to the contrary. Walking and talking and making promises. "The Council will never accept this," Horvath said. "They are already discussing orbital bombardment of this site." Walter's face hardened. "They want to bomb my farm? Because you lost a prisoner?" "Because that prisoner has killed thousands," Horvath said. "The Council sees only the threat, not the possibility of change." "Then we need to show them," Tanaka said. "We need to bring Carl before the Council. Let them see what we are seeing." "Absolutely not," Horvath said. "The security risk is already here," Tanaka interrupted. "Carl is on Earth. If he wanted to cause destruction, he could have done it already. Instead, he is helping fix fences and protecting Walter from coyotes. The Council needs to see this. They need to understand that their assumptions about Nightshade Reavers might be wrong." Rena broke radio silence. "Captain, I am hearing this conversation, and I have to say the ambassador has a point. I have seen Subject 447 in combat. I have seen what he is capable of. And what I am seeing now through your helmet cam is not the same creature. Something has changed." Horvath looked at Carl. "Would you be willing to appear before the Galactic Council to testify about your experience?" Carl's claws flexed nervously. "Will they cage me again?" "Not if I have anything to say about it," Walter said firmly. "I will go with you. We are a package deal now." "Mr. Briggs, you cannot bring a civilian to a council session," Horvath protested. "Then Carl does not go," Walter said simply. "He trusts me. I am not going to break that trust by letting him walk into a room full of people who want him dead without someone there who actually cares about him." Tanaka smiled. "Actually, Captain, as Earth's ambassador, I can grant Mr. Briggs temporary diplomatic status. He would be there as Earth's specialist on human-alien bonding. Perfectly legitimate. Horvath knew when he was beaten. Fine, but we do this properly. Full security escort, monitoring at all times. And Carl, if you make one threatening move, I will not," Carl said. "Walter says Council is important, that they make decisions for many worlds. I will behave. I will show them I am not just monster." The simple earnestness in Carl's voice broke through Horvath's last defenses. This creature, This being that he had seen only as a dangerous animal to be contained was trying to prove he could be more than what everyone expected. "All right," Horvath said. "I will arrange transport to the council station. But we need to prepare carefully. The council members will be terrified. We need to present this correctly." Walter nodded. "How about we start by you folks joining us for dinner?" Cannot make decisions on empty stomachs. And Carl has been wanting to try cooking. He is terrible at it, but he is learning. The image of the galaxy's most feared predator trying to learn to cook was so absurd that Tanaka laughed out loud. Then Horvath laughed. Then, to everyone's surprise, a rumbling sound came from Carl that might have been laughter too. "Dinner it is," Horvath said. "Rena, stand down. Tell the team to make camp but maintain perimeter." "Sir, are you sure?" "No," Horvath admitted. "But nothing about this situation makes sense anyway. Might as well continue the insanity." They spent the evening around Walter's kitchen table, which had to be extended onto the porch to fit everyone. Carl sat on the ground next to Walter, too large for any chair, eating food that Walter prepared while asking constant questions about human customs, Earth history, and whether all humans were as strange as Walter. Horvath watched the creature that had killed his crew members laughing at Walter's jokes and carefully petting Betty when she came to investigate. He watched Walter treat the Nightshade Reaver with the same patient kindness he probably showed all his animals. And he watched Tanaka taking notes, already planning her speech to the council. "You know," Rena said quietly, sitting next to Horvath. "I hated that creature. I wanted him dead for what he did to my squad. But seeing him like this, seeing what he could have been if anyone had treated him differently from the start, it makes me angry at us, not him." "We did what protocol demanded," Horvath said. "Maybe the protocol was wrong." As night fell over Montana, stars began to appear overhead. The same stars that hung over thousands of worlds in the galaxy, where countless species lived according to rules and assumptions about what was possible and what was not. Tomorrow, they would take those assumptions and challenge them before the highest authority in known space. But tonight, in this small farm on a backwater planet, they simply shared a meal and discovered that the distance between monster and friend might be smaller than anyone had ever imagined. Walter raised his glass of tea. "To second chances. May we all get one when we need it." Carl carefully picked up his own glass, trying not to break it with his claws, and raised it in imitation. "To second chances." They drank together as Betty dozed contentedly and the earth turned slowly beneath the stars, carrying them all toward an uncertain future that somehow felt full of hope. The council chamber had never been so quiet. Every representative sat frozen in their seats as Carl walked through the massive doors, his obsidian scales gleaming under the station's lights. Behind him, wearing a harness that Walter had insisted was more respectful than chains, the galaxy's most feared predator moved with careful, deliberate steps. Walter walked beside him, one hand resting on Carl's arm in a gesture of solidarity that made several council members gasp. Ambassador Tanaka followed, her diplomatic credentials displayed on a holographic badge. Horvath and Rena brought up the rear, weapons holstered but ready. Council member Tallis had evacuated to a reinforced observation booth. His voice came through speakers, shaking slightly. "This is highly irregular. We do not allow dangerous prisoners into the council chamber." "Carl is not a prisoner," Tanaka said clearly. "He is a free being appearing voluntarily to testify about his experiences." "He is a mass murderer," Tallis countered. "He should be executed, not given a platform." Walter stepped forward. "Council member, my name is Walter Briggs. I am a farmer from Earth. And I am here to tell you that everything you think you know about Carl is wrong." "You have known the creature for days," Dreve said from his seat, having chosen to remain in the chamber proper. "We have studied Nightshade Reavers for centuries. They are incapable of reasoning, empathy, or peaceful coexistence. With respect, sir, you have studied them in captivity," Walter said. "You have studied them as prisoners and threats. You have never studied them as people." "They are not people," Tallis insisted. Carl's voice, rough but clear through the translation system, filled the chamber. "Then what am I?" The question stopped the debate cold. Carl took a step forward and Rena tensed, but Walter shook his head at her. Carl was not threatening. He was just tired of being talked about instead of talked to. "I was born on world that kills the weak," Carl said slowly, working through concepts he had learned from Walter. "I survived by being strong, by being violent, Then your people came. They caught me, put me in cage. Everyday pain. Everyday fear. Every day I learn that galaxy is full of beings who hurt me, fear me, hate me. So I become what you expect. I become monster. He paused, looking at Walter, who nodded encouragement. Then I crash on Earth, in Walter's field. I am hurt, I am angry. I am ready to kill first being I see. But Walter does not run, does not attack. He helps me. He talks to me like I am person. He gives me name, Carl, I am Carl. Not subject 447, not monster. Carl. Tanaka stepped forward. Distinguished council members, I present evidence of the transformation Carl has undergone in just 1 week. She activated a holographic display showing footage from Horvath's surveillance drones. The council watched as Carl helped Walter repair fences, learned to feed cattle without scaring them, and sat on the porch in the evening while Walter read from books, teaching Carl to understand more complex language. This is what happens when we treat beings with dignity instead of fear, Tanaka said. Carl is capable of learning, growth, and peaceful coexistence. He is capable of friendship and loyalty. He is not a monster. He is a person who was never given the chance to be anything else. Until now, Walter added, and he has taken that chance and run with it. Carl has been nothing but respectful and helpful. He protects me not because I command him, but because he chooses to. That is not animal behavior. That is choosing family, Councilmember Dreve spoke. Even if we accept this remarkable change, the fact remains that Subject 447 has killed thousands of beings. There must be accountability. Carl bowed his head. I killed. I do not deny. On my world, kill or die. In captivity, I killed to escape torture. But Walter taught me about justice, about making amends. I cannot bring back those I killed, but I can be different now. I can show that Nightshade Reavers can change if given chance. And what if you revert? Dreve asked, not unkindly. What if your violent nature resurfaces? Then I accept consequences, Carl said. But I will not revert. Walter showed me different way. Better way. I do not want to go back to being what I was. Horvath stepped forward. Council, I was skeptical. Deeply skeptical. But I have witnessed the bond between these two. I have seen Carl make choices that no Nightshade Reaver should be capable of making. He chooses peace when violence would be easier. He chooses cooperation over domination. He is proof that our understanding of his species is incomplete. Rena added her voice. This creature killed my squad. I hated him for it. I wanted revenge. But after seeing what he has become, after understanding what we did to him through years of captivity and cruelty, I believe the fault is ours, not his. We created the monster. Walter showed us the person underneath. The council chamber erupted in debate. Representatives argued back and forth about precedent, security risks, and the implications of accepting Carl's rehabilitation. The discussion went on for hours while Carl stood calmly, occasionally looking to Walter for reassurance. Finally, Councilmember Dreve stood. I propose a compromise. Carl will be allowed to remain on Earth under supervision. He will be monitored remotely. If he commits any violent act not in legitimate self-defense, he will be immediately recaptured. But if he maintains peaceful behavior after 1 Earth year, we will revisit his status and consider full freedom. Additionally, Dreve continued, I propose we commission a study of Nightshade Reavers raised in non-hostile environments. Perhaps Mr. Briggs would consent to consulting on such a program. Walter looked at Carl, who looked back with something like hope in his eyes. We accept the terms, Walter said. But I want it on record that Carl is choosing this freely. He is not a prisoner agreeing to parole. He is a person accepting responsibility for his future. Talus, still in his protective booth, objected strenuously, but he was outvoted. The council reached its decision. Carl would return to Earth. He would be free but watched. 1 year to prove that redemption was possible. The journey back to Montana was quiet. Carl sat in the transport ship looking out at the stars, thinking about the year ahead. Walter sat next to him. Betty curled up on his lap. You did good up there, Walter said. Spoke from the heart. Margaret would have been proud of you. I was scared, Carl admitted. Being brave does not mean not being scared. It means doing what is right even when you are scared. They landed at the farm as the sun was setting, painting the Montana sky in shades of orange and gold. Carl helped Walter unload their few belongings from the ship, and then they stood together looking at the fields that stretched to the horizon. 1 year, Carl said. Then they decide if I am truly free. You are already free, Walter said. Freedom is not something the council gives you. It is something you choose every day. You choose to be kind instead of cruel. You choose to build instead of destroy. You choose family instead of isolation. You are already free, Carl. The council just needs time to see it. That night, as Carl settled into his corner of the barn with Betty curled up against his side, he thought about the word Walter used. Family. He had never had family on his homeworld. Nightshade Reavers did not form bonds. But here on this small farm with this stubborn old human and this fearless small dog, he had found something he never knew he needed. The next morning, Walter found Carl already awake and working on repairing the barn door that had been damaged during his crash landing a week ago. The creature worked carefully, mindful of Walter's instructions about measuring twice and cutting once. Morning, Carl. You're up early. Wanted to fix damage from my arrival. It is my responsibility, Walter smiled. That it is. How about after we finish this, we work on expanding the chicken coop? I have been thinking about getting those chickens Margaret always wanted. I would like that, Carl said, and he meant it. 3 months later, Ambassador Tanaka visited the farm to check on Carl's progress. She found him teaching a group of Earth's animal behavior specialists about Nightshade Reaver communication, using himself as a living example of how his species could integrate into peaceful society. 6 months later, the council received a request from 3 other species asking if their impossible-to-rehabilitate predators could be sent to Earth for assessment. Walter and Carl had prepared the old chicken coop to house new arrivals, working together to build something more than cages. They built spaces where frightened, violent beings could learn that the universe contained more than fear and pain. 1 year to the day after his appearance before the council, Carl stood in the same chamber. But this time he was not alone. 3 other beings stood with him, each one formerly classified as too dangerous to live freely. Each one had spent months at Walter's farm, learning what Carl had learned about choice and second chances. Council member Dreve smiled as he made the announcement. It is the decision of this council that Carl, formerly Subject 447, has demonstrated conclusive evidence of successful rehabilitation. All monitoring restrictions are hereby removed. He is granted full citizenship status under galactic law. The chamber erupted in applause. Even Talus, watching from his booth, seemed grudgingly impressed. But Carl did not care about the applause or the citizenship status. He cared about the old human sitting in the gallery, wearing his best shirt for the occasion, tears running down his weathered face. Walter had believed in him when no one else did. Walter had seen past the monster to the person underneath. After the ceremony, Carl and Walter stood on the observation deck of the station, looking down at Earth floating in space. What happens now? Carl asked. Now we go home, Walter said. We have got chickens to feed and fence to mend and probably another lost soul or 2 showing up needing help. That is what family does, Carl. We take care of each other. Carl placed one massive clawed hand gently on Walter's shoulder, careful not to hurt him. Thank you, he said. For everything. Thank you for giving an old farmer something to believe in again, Walter replied. For showing me that it is never too late to be better than you were. They returned to Montana, to the small farm that had become famous across the galaxy as the place where monsters learned to be people. The barn had been expanded to accommodate the rehabilitation program. The fields grew crops that would feed refugees from a dozen worlds. And in the evening, Walter would sit on his porch with Carl beside him, Betty at their feet, watching the sun set over land that had taught the galaxy about second chances. Sometimes visitors came from other worlds, wanting to see the Nightshade Reaver who chose peace over violence. Carl greeted them politely, answered their questions patiently, and always introduced them to Walter, because none of his transformation would have been possible without one stubborn human who refused to see him as a monster. And sometimes, late at night when the farm was quiet, Carl would look up at the stars and think about his homeworld, about all the young Nightshade Reavers growing up in violence and fear. He thought about how different their lives could be if someone gave them what Walter gave him: respect, patience, and the simple belief that they could be more than what everyone expected. Someday, Carl said to Walter one evening, I would like to go back to my homeworld, not to conquer or destroy, to teach, to show them there is another way. Walter rocked in his chair, considering. That is a good dream, Carl. And if anyone can make it happen, it is you. But first, we have got work to do right here. Those new arrivals are coming next week, and the barn needs another coat of paint. Carl rumbled his agreement. There would be time for grand dreams later. For now, there was work to do, family to care for, and a life to live that he had never imagined possible. In the quiet Montana night, with stars overhead and good soil underfoot, Carl had found something more valuable than freedom or citizenship. He had found home, and he had learned the most important lesson Walter could teach him, that it is never too late to choose who you want to be, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone believe in you. The galaxy had learned that monsters were often just people who had never been given a better option. And on a small farm in Montana, one old farmer and one reformed predator proved every single day that kindness was stronger than fear. That change was always possible, and that family was not about species or origin, but about choice. "Hey, Carl," Walter said as they headed inside for the night. "Tomorrow we need to talk about building that greenhouse I have been planning. Think you're up for learning some carpentry?" "I am always up for learning," Carl said. And he meant it. Because every day brought new chances to grow, to become better, to prove that redemption was not just possible but worth fighting for. And in the barn, in Carl's corner where he had first learned what safety felt like, a small plaque hung on the wall. Walter had made it himself. Wood-burned letters spelling out words that had become Carl's personal creed. Not what I was, what I choose to be.